Welcome, everybody, to Dead Talk Live. And tonight we have with us acclaimed director of such movies as House on Haunted Hill, Fear.com, William Malone. William, thank you so much for being here with us. How you doing?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Well, I've
And
been
hi, everybody.
I've been very much looking forward to this interview, and so have a lot of my team members and our viewers as well. Now, let's just get right to it. You have been in this industry for a while. Is it safe to assume that you are retired?
No, actually not.
Oh,
I no, sort of COVID retired me here for a little while, but no, I actually had a film project in the works just before the COVID thing hit. So
awesome.
no, I think I kind of follow that thing of they'll have to pry the camera out of my dead hand.
And you know what? Almost every, whether it's an actor, filmmaker, it's all been the same answer when it comes to any time the question of retirement comes up. The response that I get, it's like asking me to stop breathing. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, I mean, look, I started making little movies. I think when I was 12 years old, and my parents bought me an 8 millimeter camera, and I just can't imagine not doing it. So
It's
it's just
awesome. It's
it's
awesome.
what it is.
So you've been in the entertainment industry now for 40 plus years. Uh, with regard to the horror genre, you have seen it go through a lot of changes. What are your thoughts on where horror is right now in terms of popularity and, the quality of films that we're getting right now?
It was a good question. I mean, well, it's changed a lot. I think what's happened is that the business has changed so drastically. Primarily, I guess, because of the internet and also the availability of cameras and stuff like that. So there's a lot of films out there, and I think because there's so much content, it is in some ways hurt the quality of films. I think that there there certainly are still good films being made, but I think when you had to shoot film, uh, there was sort of you had to know more about filmmaking, I guess, is,
Yeah, it was,
to
yeah.
actually go do it.
Computers have made it a lot easier now for
Yeah.
people to get involved. And in regard to the content, you're absolutely right. When I want to watch a movie, let's say I don't have a movie specifically to watch and I just want to sit on my couch and browse, I got to research before I sit down because there's so much content out there.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's funny because last night I was talking with my wife and we were sitting there watching, I think it was Netflix. We were scrolling through and we were, I don't even know where to begin. I don't know,
Exactly.
And I thought, maybe we should just do a thing where we start each movie and give it like 15 minutes. And if it's and just move on if it's not good. I don't know. I don't know how else to deal with it.
I know this.
Um, Francis Coppola, I think, said when digital cameras first started coming out, he said something like that he thought it was going to be wonderful, that everyone, it just means there's going to be tons of great movies coming. No, no, it was just,
There's just a
it
bunch
means
of
there's a lot of
everything.
junk.
Yeah, there's a bunch of everything. Now, you are known primarily for your work in horror, but you have done the full spectrum from comedies to a little bit of everything all the way through horror. How do you feel about sort of being labeled as this horror director, great horror director?
Well, thank you. Actually, I'm totally thrilled with it because that's what I started out being. I actually got into it sort of sideways because I was working at this company called Don Post Studios, and we used to make masks, but we also made effects stuff for films and so forth. And directors would come in. This is in the '70s. Directors would come in, and for the most part, they were directors who hated horror, but they somehow got stuck with doing a horror film. So they would ask for just terrible stuff, and I went, God, I love it. Why are you doing this? So I think that sort of propelled me into say, oh, well, at least I can do better than this guy because I love it. So,
Exactly. Do something that you love. Now, take us back. You brought up the 70s. Take us back to the 70s. Not just horror. What was the entertainment industry like back then? And that's so
well,
different from today.
well, it's very different. I mean, first of all, when you think about the movies that were out, 70s, to my mind, was a horrible period for just about everything except for movies. You know, music sucked, the wardrobe sucked. It was just terrible. But you had movies like The Godfather and Chinatown, and those are movies that wouldn't get made today.
No.
No studio would finance those movies today, and it's a shame because, you know, you know, that's that's kind of what I think is a sad thing about what we're seeing happen.
I'll tell you what, my wife actually took my two teenage boys and sat them down, and they all watched The Godfather and The Godfather Part 2 and The Godfather Part 3. They, on their own now, they will just go back and just rewatch the whole thing again. They fell in love with it. It's a class. It's a timeless classic. And why do you think like movies like The Godfather would not be made today?
Well, I think because the studios now consider it like a niche audience, you know, and they're all about the blockbuster,
Yeah.
and and not that those occasionally some movies, like maybe Phantom Thread or one of those things get made, but they don't have the budget that like
No.
Coppola had when he was making, the Godfather movies, and yeah, I mean, it's just an entirely different world, and all they want to do now is just make big blockbuster, mostly guys in tights movies,
Now let me ask you a question. Going back to the 70s, 80s, even the early 90s, uh, let's take Paranormal Activity. It was done on a zero $10,000 budget. Was that even heard of back then? I mean, what was the minimum you needed to actually put a film together?
Well, yeah, I don't think you could make a movie. Well, I take that back. I mean, look, Robert Rodriguez made his first movie, I think, for $7,000 or something. It made a lot of money, but generally speaking, I mean, my first movie was Scared to Death, and that cost $74,000, and that was just unheard of to make a movie
That
for
cheap.
for that cheap. And if you look back, I mean, I think Halloween, I believe, cost about $300,000, and that was considered a low budget film. So, now today, $300,000 is a big budget.
It's a good budget now if you have $300,000. And now, the early part of your career, you did some acting. So, was your aspirations were to
Yeah, I was
get into
never.
acting, or and then
No, I was never an actor. I still, I only did it just out of a lark or something, or somebody
okay.
say, come over and do something,
So your passion has always been with filmmaking.
Right, right. As a filmmaker, yeah. So,
Now,
I mean, that's mainly what I wanted to do. And I remember actually there was a day when I quit Don Post Studios and I said, from today on, I'm a director. I haven't directed anything, but from today on, I'm a director.
uh,
So,
along with directing, you have produced, you have written. Let's take writing, for example. Is writing something, looking back, that you wish you would have explored more than you did, or are you perfectly satisfied?
well, look, you always want to be better at your craft, whatever it is. And I certainly wish that I were a better writer than I am. And, and if you look at my script, usually on the first page of my script, it always says, be better today, you know, be better today than yesterday. And I feel that way about writing. You want to try and do as good a job as you can. And I love good writing. I mean, there's some movies that I adore, like Sunset Boulevard,
Hmm.
Billy Wilder's films and stuff like that, and Double Indemnity. And my God, the writing in those films are so wonderful. And,
Yes.
and that's what you aspire to, and I always felt like there's no reason why horror shouldn't be like that. I mean, it should horror. I never wanted to make movies that I felt like I was talking down to the audience.
Hmm.
So
Now, you've done so much directing. When it came time for you to work with the writer to get the writer's idea of what they were, trying to portray, how'd you find working with all the different various writers in your career? Did you guys click?
mostly, yeah, mostly. I mean, I get along really well with writers. I mean, because I understand what they're doing, and I have great respect for good writing. And mostly the stuff I've done, of course, has been stuff I've written. But on television stuff, particularly, there's been a lot of stuff which I didn't write, and yeah, I didn't write Fear.com, and I didn't write a lot of TV shows.
Yeah.
But but yeah, I mean, in a way, getting when you get a script from somebody who's not, not your own script, the beauty of it is you get a perspective that you don't have on your own stuff.
Hmm.
You can see it in a way. You can see it more clearly, even though when you write something, you have all the stuff in your head, but you don't have a good perspective on it. You really
Yeah.
don't.
That's true.
So,
That I never thought of it that way. So let's get to one of your biggest films directing, and that is House on Haunted Hill. Tell us how you directing that movie, and how did it come your way?
well, actually, it came about because I had directed an episode of Tales from the Crypt called Only
Yes.
Skin Deep, which the producers really liked, and so they wanted me to do some other stuff. Which in the interim between that, I did some other things for them. I did another Tales from the Crypt, and then one in England, in fact, and then a show called Perversions of Science,
Mm-hmm.
and then a made-for-TV movie and stuff. And so I got a call. I think this is probably about late 1997. I got a call from Joel Silver, who said that they had bought the rights to the William Castle catalog, and that they were thinking about doing a remake of House on Haunted Hill. And I said, I am on board. I said, because first of all, I was thinking, I'd been thinking for quite a while. I said, I want to do a ghost movie, you
Yeah.
know. So it was like perfect. A ghost movie, House on Haunted Hill, and yeah. So that's how it sort of got started. There was a writer. I brought on the writer from my Crypt episode, which I'd only met on that episode. A guy named Dick Beebe, who was a lovely guy and a really strong writer. But we sent him off to do a draft of the script, and unfortunately, Dick had a little problem with the tubes there,
Yeah.
and he, after 6 months of work, he turned in a script which was just awful, and I really felt like he probably wrote the whole thing on the night before it had to be turned in. But and the studio was planning on pulling the plug on the project. So I said, look, guys, just if you can just wait, let me talk with Dick. So Dick and I got together, and I said, let's screen the original movie and write down everything we love about it and put it in the movie. It was just what we did. And I said,
Mm-hmm.
no, now let's take the things that we would like to have seen and let's put that in there. And so that's really how we approached it. And once we both actually I co-wrote the screen the movie with him, and we took it back to the studio, and they said, yeah, we love this, we want to make it. So that we then got the green light to go ahead with it.
Now, the remake, your House on Haunted Hill, has gained a following, as had the original, and it's still very relevant today. When you were remaking this film, did it surpass your expectations?
um, I didn't really have any expectations, to be honest with you. I've been in the business so long, and after you've been in a long time, you get beat up, and you just got to go, yeah, whatever it's going to do, whatever it did. I had guessed. I think I guessed that it would probably do something like $40 million in the U.S. That was my guess, and it was not because of the movie. It was just because Warner Brothers promotion, their distribution and all that stuff. So that was what I guessed that they would do. But
Okay. Now, the paranormal subgenre in horror is the one subgenre that has withstood the test of time in horror. With movies going back to the 70s and early 80s, like The Changeling with George C. Scott, of course, the Amityville Horror, and it's at an all time high in popularity today. Why do you feel ghost stories, the paranormal stories, have just remained so popular to today?
well, actually, it's because of old people like myself. The reason I thought ghost stories would be better, I've always looked at things like, okay, the baby boomers, you look at them, okay, Beatles, understand that, the teenagers, so the next group, the next thing you're going to come across are a lot of old people dying, so they're going to be thinking about ghosts. and and that kind of thing. So, I mean, that was really, honestly, that was part of it. So, by the way, invest in mortuaries.
Now, House on Haunted Hill is such a well-paced film. Beautiful scenery, nicely paced. Is Was that intentionally done under your direction, or did it just all come together that way?
Well, like I said, we went back and looked at the original film, and we said, it it had its own pace, which was had slower back then because that was the pace of films. I said we need to amp this up, which was the idea, and so yeah, I mean, I was very heavily into working with Dick on making the picture, move along. Um, the way it worked actually is on the script. Dick wrote pretty much most of the character stuff because he was really good at that, and I think he's better at it than I am. And I wrote most of the plotting and the horror elements,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's really how we divided up the work. Um, so that was the approach that we took. But yeah, I mean, obviously we tried to make it move along as well as possible. But I thought also I wanted to make a movie that was scary, and later on we were winding up making it funny. And originally it was supposed to be just a straight scary movie.
Uh-huh.
But that's another story completely because 2 weeks before we started shooting, I started getting pages from the writers of Friends for some reason. And I went, okay. So I guess the studio wants Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein. So that's how it
Oh man. Now the 99 version, again, your version of House on Haunted Hill, seems to have been made for like a mainstream audience back in the late 90s. Do you think that has helped it remain relevant even to today, as opposed to, I don't know what the right way to say this is, making it for a particular kind of audience that you could pay tribute to the original movie? I mean, was it
well,
made for a wide audience, for the audience in general to appreciate this film's both horror and maybe even not horror?
yeah, I mean, look, when you make a film, you'd like to have as much, as many people see your movie as possible, but honestly, uh, I'll have to credit, the producers with some of that because it was a struggle, because I wanted to make a really just sort of straight ahead scary movie, which may not have performed as well. I don't know, I
Yeah.
don't know whether or not that would have happened, but so it's kind of like when the Beatles had their like struggle going on back and forth between John and Paul. It was like you had the rocker and the guy who was like the melodist. So I don't know, but in the end, I was happy with the product. I think it
Yeah.
turned out well, and my bend really is like Tales from the Crypt. When I was doing the Tales from the Crypt, was kind of that's me. I mean,
I mean, Tales from the Crypt. I remember those shows. Tales from the Crypt, Tales from the Dark Side. I used to love watching those little episodic anthologies back in the late 80s and even into the early 90s. In your opinion, would it help audiences who have not seen the 99 version of the film to see the original and then see your remake? Or was it your intention when you made the your version of the film that people did not even have to have heard of the original film?
well, yeah. I mean, look, I figured that probably most people were going to go see this never even heard of the original House on Haunted Hill.
Yeah.
The studios like to buy those titles because they think that there's a lot of people who like will suddenly, oh, it's House on Haunted Hill, but no, you know, uh, you know, the demographic changes every 10, 12 years or something like that, or even sooner. So I pretty much figured that nobody would remember the original.
Yeah.
So I had to be a standalone movie that would be appeal to modern audiences.
Yeah. Now, when the movie came out, a lot of reviewers, in regards to Jeffrey Rush's performance, said that he deserved a lot more recognition for his amazing performance on that film. What was it? What was your experience like first working with Jeffrey?
Well, Jeffrey, first of all, I gotta say, I love Jeffrey. Jeffrey is just he's obviously a great actor, but he's also was great to work with. And when you're making a horror film, and you have somebody like Jeffrey Rush, who was at the time when we were making it, going off to the Academy Awards for I forget the movie Elizabeth or something, and you go, why would you even want to be in House on Haunted Hill? And I actually asked him that question. He says, I'm rather tired of playing men in tights. I want to be an action hero. I said, you're my man. And then he told me, actually, the first time I met him, he said, well, the night before he'd gone to the New Art Theater and seen The Black Cat with Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi, I said, you are my man.
It sounds like
So
Jeffrey was, a horror fan, and he just wanted to do something in that realm. Would you
he
say?
did, and he had great fun doing it. And when I was on the set, I'd be directing some other scene. I'd look off in the corner, and he'd be there studying his line. He took it very seriously, and
Yeah.
I was very impressed with him and the way he conducted himself. And like I said, I mean, he could have been just like taking it for a paycheck, but
Yeah,
he
no,
wasn't.
no, you don't see that in his performance.
No.
Looking at the final product, how do you feel you did in balancing out the fun energy of the film with the scary factor of the film?
Well, I hope it's good. You never know because, like I see, when I watch the movie, all I see is cardboard. You know? So it's kind of hard for me to say. But seems like the audiences enjoyed it. I remember seeing it with an audience and here in Los Angeles, and there were a bunch of people walked out, and I was, oh my God, they're walking out of my movie,
Ooh.
and I walked outside and I went up to this one girl and I said, you don't like the movie? No, it's too scary. I went,
Yeah,
yes.
yes. How involved were you with the post production? Because one of the elements that makes this film so great is the sound, the score itself. Was that all you, and where to put it, and working with the post production team?
Well, first of all, I say nothing is all me. I mean, it's just
No, yeah,
we're in a business where it requires a lot of talent and a lot of different people to work with. As far as I don't know if you can probably guess from my other movies, I'm very much into classical music, and
yeah,
and one of the things about the score was I was thinking to myself, pipe organ music used to be the standard thing when you think of horror movies. And I thought, nobody's used it in a zillion years because it's such a cliche. But
yeah.
I said, now is the time to use it. So I had Don Davis, who I thought did a wonderful score. And we attempted in with some rather strange music, and he adapted to that. One of my favorite cues is I think when they're looking at the saturation chamber, when they first come across the saturation chamber, and there's this weird music. It sounds like Middle Eastern, or it's just wrong, and it's just so perfect for the film. And but yeah, I mean, that was something I was definitely into. Yeah, I mean, I was very involved in the post production. Basically what happened is, I sat there and was there every day on the edit and the sound effects and stuff, and then we delivered it to the studio, and of course they made their changes. I don't think there were as many changes that I can think of. It was
They
there was
kept
just
it.
I
They
think there
kept
was
it
only
pretty
one
much.
scene.
Yeah, they kept it pretty much like you delivered it to them.
Pretty well. I mean, there was one scene that I'm sorry that got cut out, which is it's when uh, Bridget Wilson was going downstairs. Before she goes downstairs, she's walking through the house,
Hmm.
and there's this sort of mural that she goes by that just looks like some sort of modern painting. And then as the camera turns and we sort of come around her in front of her, you see that the painting is actually a actual creepy painting that's been
Ooh.
painted in kind of some distorted way, so it looks, and then at the last moment it starts to come alive and chase her, and it was wonderful. And what's weird is that, like, Joel, when he sat and watched it, he like jumped out of his seat, and then they said, "Oh, let's cut it."
Why?
What? What do you mean? Let's cut it?
Oh, that would have been so awesome. Now, the movie is reported to have a budget somewhere in the 19 to $20 million range, which is huge. Is
I
that
don't
accurate?
I don't think so. Look, it was a studio film, but I'm thinking it was probably closer to like 13 or 14 million.
Still pretty. I mean, it's that's even for '99. Well, especially back for '99, we're going over. That's 22, 23 years ago. Working on films with that kind of money, uh, what kind of freedoms does it allow you as a director?
Well, look, when you're making this was my first studio film. Obviously, I'd made other movies, and I've made, Creature was a fairly large production as far as budget, and not budget, but just as far as things, making things and sets and stuff. But this was my first studio film, and when you make a studio film, you have an obligation, and also the studio, your first time at bat, they're not going to give you too many things that you're going to be able to play with. I mean, the things I was able to play with was the script, the way the film looked, the the cinematography, the music, and that stuff. But as far as like the casting, like I had almost no say in the casting. Uh,
Which
you
is
know,
odd in today's world. It's like the director has complete autonomy over the casting.
Well, I doubt that's true, and I'm guessing that the guys who are directing some of these big studio films are probably saying, "No, this guy's in your movie." It's really a business where the tail wags the dog, because they go, "Well, if we get this," I mean, that's how I wound up with Jeffrey. Fortunately, Jeffrey was number one on my list, and I turned it in, and it turned out it was number one on their list, so that
Good.
was a no brainer, So I got Jeffrey, and then also. Some of the other people that, for instance, I'll give you an idea how the film would have been different. My original idea was to have the Chris Kattan played by John Hurt, which of course would have been a completely different movie,
Oh yeah,
So, but I love Chris Kattan. He did an awesome job.
he
Uh,
did, and you know, he was, I believe, before that or during that, like on Saturday Night Live, and
right.
it showed his flexibility as an actor to do this. Speaking of the other characters, were there specific elements that you were looking for the cast? And you basically just said that you really didn't have much input as to who got casted. Were you happy with the
No,
casting
look.
choices?
I was happy with the cast. I think they were all fine actors, uh, you know, yeah. I mean, the only other person that was on my list was uh, 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 Jeffrey Combs, you know,
Yeah.
and of course, that was not a problem getting him on the film. But look, the rest of the cast I thought did great, and I loved Famke. She's a really strong actor, and uh, and so were all the other actors. I loved working with Bridget Wilson. She's like a living Warner Brothers cartoon. That's the best
Yes.
way I can describe her. She is like that in person.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, and Tay Diggs, what a good cast. Yeah.
So walk us through. Here's this studio film you just directed. It opened up like on Halloween weekend in 1999, if I'm correct. As a director of the film, what do you do on that opening weekend? Do you go and watch it with the crowd and gauge their reactions?
Yeah, I mean, I think it first night. I don't think it was actually on Halloween. I think it was on like a Friday night or something. Like
Yeah.
we definitely went and watched it with an audience and stuff, and that was very enjoyable. Of course, it's great seeing your film up on the marquee and all that. So, uh, but yeah, I mean, that's what we did. And then I think Halloween night we actually went to a club and partied. So.
Yeah, yeah. Now, were there any aspects of this film that presented you with a challenge that you had not faced before?
Well, I mean, there was a lot of stuff. I mean, just because it had a lot of. I was trying to do a lot of in-camera effects, and of course that's always challenging. And the biggest challenge to some of that I knew what I wanted to do, but it was trying to get some of the crew up and running on it because it was such odd stuff. We were shooting. I was shooting weird frame rates and stuff like that, and I go, okay, this shot's going to take 2 minutes to shoot, and all the guy's doing is walking across the room from here to there, and everyone's like, and why are we doing this? And of course, and then I remember getting a call from the producers going, "You're spending money on visual effects. Where is that effects?" I said, "No, we did it in camera." And, oh, okay.
Speaking of effects, what are your feelings on CGI in horror in particular today?
I think CGI is a great tool. I don't honestly think it'll ever completely, replace practical effects because, I think Chris Nolan, is a great believer in that too. There's something magical that happens that the audience can't put their finger on, but they just know it's real. And when it's real, it's got some energy. You look at the stunts. The stunts in those old movies. People were really risking their lives to do some of those things. And there's just something about it that just strikes the imagination. Whereas CG, you can just watch it. Go, yeah, okay, the shooting and the bombs that are going off. Yeah, nobody's actually being injured or even close to being in danger. It's like, and you thought, well, the characters aren't really in danger either. So
that's what I appreciate. I'm a big, supporter of independent films today, and it forces you when you have a lower budget to really become innovative when you don't have the money to spend on the real high-end CGI and visual graphics that studio films have. Do you agree with that?
Well, yeah. You have to look. You have to. There's two things that you need as an independent filmmaker. One is to be really stupid, okay, and by that I mean not knowing what you can't do.
Yeah.
Right. I look back on Scared to Death, the first movie that I made for $74,000. If I turned that over to a production manager, he would go, "No, you can't go all across the town and shoot like 20 different locations at night and day." And it's like, so yeah, you have to be really inventive when you're doing it. And also, I think as an independent, you have to think to yourself, what can I bring to this that would cost somebody else a whole lot of money? Now, if you're a CG person, maybe you can do some, set extensions or do something, do some effects that some other people can't do, or, there's always something that you can bring to it that would cost somebody else a lot of money. And I think that's the way you have to think about it.
Exactly. And almost every director that I've spoken to, when it comes to practical effects versus CGI, they all mirror your answer, like what you just said. There's just something about practical effects that cannot be replicated with computer graphics.
There's just a barrier. I don't know what that is. Computer graphics have gotten really, really good. There's no question about it. They do amazing stuff with it. But what they still don't have is that feeling like you're immersed in it. And I don't know what that is. It's just something that I think it's all the random things that happen when you shoot. Like I would rather see a miniature. I'll give you an example. I was watching The Aviator, Martin Scorsese's movie, and I remember there's a scene where the plane crashes into the houses over Beverly Hills, and I remember walking away going, "Oh man, look, I'm sold. That's great." And I learned later it was all miniatures. Of course, it was miniatures because it's great.
That's awesome. So let me ask you this. How do you feel about going into a theater, before COVID or even now, and you're going to see like a big budget film, like a Marvel Cinema action type film where you're going to get a lot of do you still, put that aside and go in there, not as a filmmaker, but as a fan and try to enjoy the movie? Are you able to enjoy the movie?
I try. I always try and leave that stuff behind when I go see a movie and just like enjoy it. Um, I just sort of gauge it by am I into the movie? Is it carrying me away? And
Yeah,
if I'm sitting there looking at the shots, then no, they didn't do their job. You know,
because
so
they're supposed to distract you from that and keep you
exactly
involved in the
that's what
story.
movies supposed to carry you away into a dream. That's one of the reasons why I'm not interested in making dramas because I don't,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. Now, as a horror director, uh, how do you feel about balancing gore, blood with good character storytelling?
Well, look, I mean, uh, I think somebody once said, when the next day you don't remember the plot, but you remember the characters.
True,
Which I think is a true thing.
it is.
It's really got to be you got to care about the characters first, and then the rest of it comes later. And as far as gore goes, I think gore should be a punctuation. It should not be what your movie's about.
Yes,
I don't have any problem with gore. Obviously, I've used it many times in my movies, but it should just be punctuation to a scene.
I absolutely agree with that. Now, in 2007, they did return to House on Haunted Hill, definitely because of the success of the 99 film. Were you ever consulted about it? What'd you feel about them doing a sequel?
Well, actually, it was my idea. Actually, I remember I had lunch with Steve Richards, who was the guy over at Silver Pictures, and I said, I don't understand why you guys aren't doing a sequel to House on Haunted Hill. I mean, it's made all this money, and he walked away going, and that was the last I heard of it. So no, they never contacted me because you know,
How do you feel about the sequel?
I really don't want to comment on somebody else's movie. All I can
That's
say is,
true.
I guess the only thing is, I thought he did a good job. The I was a little disappointed maybe that they weren't willing to build the sets and make it the original
Yeah, yeah.
sets.
I could see
It was,
that.
I think, done in Romania or someplace. And
Yeah, yeah. It's amazing
yeah,
how many movies are now shot in these very unexpected locations. Obviously, it all comes down to dollars and cents. It's much
right.
cheaper. Now, House on Haunted Hill, the location is reported to have been shot just outside Griffith Park Observatory. Could you talk more about the location and how did that all work out for you for House on
Yeah,
Haunted
well,
Hill?
we looked for a long time actually trying to find a place for the Vanica Institute, and somebody suggested that we go look at Griffith Park, the observatory. And my initial reaction is, oh God, we've seen that in movies a million times. I said, but I'll go look at it. And then I realized that when I went there, that I walked down the front side of it, and I said, nobody ever shoots this side of it. They always shoot the back side, or the parking lot side. I said, let's go
Yeah.
down the hill. And I thought, well, this actually kind of looks different and kind of weird. I said, let's do some extensions on it. Maybe it'll work. And I was totally happy with it once I saw it. And then, of course, Bob and Denny Skotek built this great miniature
Oh,
for
yeah.
it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, when you realized and knew that you were going to be directing this, you had seen the original. Did you go back, do any extra research on the original film besides just rewatching it again?
Well, I didn't really have to because Terry Castle, William Castle's daughter, was on the set.
Oh,
Yeah, and she came down. And she, God bless her, she gave me Bill Castle's uh, uh, binder for House on Haunted Hill, so I was able to use that, and I kept it, and it's great. But yeah, I mean, I had seen it a number of times. I actually saw it when it first came out when I was a little kid, and so I was pretty familiar with the movie.
yeah.
So
Now,
yeah.
you are considered, rightfully so, as one of the masters of horror. And that, boy, that is a title to have. What are your inspirations when you're going in and directing a horror film? Is there any
Well,
style that you pick from?
well, I have a great background in. I love silent movies. I love a lot of movies from the 40s and 30s and of course the golden era of the 50s. But yeah, I mean, that's really the stuff I pull from. It's like, I love like as I mentioned before, the Black Cat. If nobody's ever seen that, that's the most twisted movie. You couldn't make that movie today. Yeah,
I
as Bela
agree.
Lugosi and Boris Karloff. Okay. Spoiler alert: Bela Lugosi skins Boris Karloff alive on a rack at the end of the movie. Okay, this is
I know. For back then, that's like
1934.
unheard of.
And Karloff is like encased has been killing off his wives in some sort of devil worshipping cult, and has them encased in plastic in the basement.
Yeah, yeah.
But no, yeah, so I love all that stuff, and movies like Faust. If you've never seen the silent movie Faust by
No, I
Murnau,
don't think
oh
I
my
have.
god, oh, that is so good. And of course, the classic things like Cabinet de Calgary. And I would urge people that if you're a young filmmaker, go back and watch silent movies, because I know you're thinking, oh my God, they're silent and they're black and white and they're boring. No, they're not boring. They're
Yeah,
boring only if you pick the bad ones. Just like it'd be like picking some bad movie today and saying, oh, well, that's what all movies are
yeah.
like from this period.
Now,
So
let's move to another one of your very popular projects, and that's, of course, Fear.com. Back in 2002, it was released, and you could say that it was sort of the opening to a lot of copycats. That
I sort of invented torture porn.
exactly, and it's still being done to this day. And there's some good new ones that have followed the formula of Fear.com. Now we got to remember this is like you probably shot it in 2001. It came out in 2002. The internet is now starting to gain steam, around the world. It came out. It was started in the late 90s, but back in the early 2000s is when every house started to get the internet in there. First, tell us how Fear.com came your way.
Well, actually, it was an idea that Moshe Diamant, who I'd worked with before on Creature years earlier, he came to me with the idea he wanted to do something about you know, a killer on the internet. And I said, well, let's make it so that it's like a haunted internet.
Yeah,
And so, I kicked around some ideas, and then he had a writer who wanted to write it. And I said, fine. So she went away and wrote the screenplay for it, and then we pretty much had to go. The only thing I would say that was a negative about the film was it got started a little earlier than I would have liked, because I felt that we needed to explore some more
hmm,
scripting in it, because we got kind of forced into production because of the pending actors strike,
yeah.
and it would have just like probably killed the film and so forth. So we forged ahead with it. But
Now,
yeah,
that film, I mean, wow, talk about being very, having a lot of foresight. It's about basically people committing these acts just to gain popularity on the internet. Looking back when you were doing it and that screenplay and directing it to sort of what the world is today and people looking for popularity on the internet, uh, if you go back to when you were shooting it, did you ever think that the world would sort of go, not obviously mirroring the movie, but in somewhat following that direction?
I actually had no idea whatsoever. I mean, it was just I thought a kind of fun horror premise,
Yeah.
and my attitude about it was, because when you make a movie for a major studio, or because it was a good chance that Warner Brothers was released it, you want to pull your punches, because the studio's not going to be too thrilled. And of course, that was the problem with the film, is that we made a film that was very dark, and I tried to make it as truthful in a way, even though it's a fantasy film. I said, what's going to be this guy's motivation and stuff
Right.
like that. So he's got some dark lines here. This whole thing about Stalin, and you know,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
and I often say I may have made the darkest movie ever in just about every aspect.
Are you proud of Fear.com?
I am, it's kind of, I, I really don't know I don't know where it's going to fall yet.
Yeah,
I guess,
yeah.
it's hard for me to really say, so.
I mean, like I said, it was sort of the prelude to a lot of copycat films that came out afterwards. I mean, I'm not saying that if Fear.com never got made, the other copycats they would have definitely gotten made. But how does it make you feel that your movie that you directed was one of the movies that opened the door to this whole brand new internet style of movie making?
I actually I don't know how to answer that, except it's kind of like when when they give you an award at the end of your career. you know, oh, thank you. So I don't know really how to
I,
respond to that,
I
but
could,
look, I'm proud of the film. I think we did some good work. I think Christian Sebald. I read one review of the film where they said that his cinematography was some of the most beautiful ever shot,
hmm.
and I would agree with that. I think he did an amazing job with the
Yeah, yeah.
cinematography on the film.
It was. The cinematography was amazing in Fear.com. Now, we have a lot of filmmakers like Eli Roth. They like to really push boundaries. When it comes to you as a director, do you like pushing boundaries to see how it's going to play off an audience, or do you like playing it more on the safe side?
I've never been safe ever.
Okay.
I mean, I always think that you're doing your best work when you're walking the railing of disaster. Because that's the only time you're doing really good work. And I can't help myself. I knew when we were making Fear.com, I was being a bad boy.
Yeah, yeah.
I knew that. And and I don't know if you know, there's actually some shots that were cut out of that for the American release. The European releases even got some other shots in that are,
No, I did
uh,
not know that.
yeah.
Is
So
the European release available in the United States anywhere to watch?
I
As
don't
far as
think
you
it is.
know?
I don't think it is, but
Okay.
I think you can get it. Probably like out of Germany or something like that. So.
Now, looking back in your career, which projects stand out to you as some of the ones that you are the most proud of?
Uh, Obviously, I'm very proud of House on Haunted Hill. I mean, it was a very difficult film to make, and I'm very happy the way that turned out, and I'm really thrilled the way people have responded to it. Um, Probably, I think my first Tales from the Crypt episode is one I'm very proud of. The Only Skin Deep, because it was like a perfect gift to me. They sent me the script, and I thought, oh man, I know exactly how to do this, and I felt very happy with the way it turned out. And then the Masters of Horror that I did,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I'm also very proud of Parasomnia, which not a lot of people have seen, but we're going to do a re-release of it soon with some new effects in it, and so
Nice.
yeah.
So, like I said, a large experience. You have done a lot of also made for TV movies. Is
Yeah.
there any difference when it comes to directing uh, a feature film that's going to go to theaters as opposed to something that is going to go straight to television?
Well, it's drastically different. It
Hmm?
really is. Yeah, I mean, like when you make a feature, it's really all about your vision and trying to like fight for it and get everything you can on it. Most television shows, now I wouldn't say that certainly I've done both, where it's completely my vision. Like Masters of Horror was, I had no interference. I could do whatever I want, and also the Tales from the Crypt. That was just by default because by that time the producers didn't care about the show anymore. So I was able to do what I wanted. But mostly when you're doing TV, it's a really a producer's medium, and you're really there to serve what their vision of it is, and you don't want your episode to look different than everybody else's because
Yeah.
that's not what you're there for. So and usually the shows that I've been on that were like episodic things that I've done were shows where they've been running for a while, and you just come on and you try to make the day and make it as good as you can make it
Yeah.
and walk away. And it's more like that's like a real job. That's like you walk in, you do your job, they pay you, you walk out. But feature film's not like that. That's something you nurse along for years, and you sweat and you tear your hair out. I mean, I got a bleeding ulcer making House on Haunted Hill. So.
Which of the two do you think allows you to be more creative?
Well, certainly. Well, I don't know. Actually, I've been able to be creative on some of the television shows I've done. Like I said, because of the particular shows I did.
Mm-hmm.
But
Okay, okay.
yeah,
Now, in 2013, you remastered and re-released an uncut version of the 1985 cult classic Creature under its original title, which was Titan Find. Now,
right.
what are the major differences between the original release and your uncut version?
Well, a little backtrack on the history of Creature is when we first finished the film, we struck an answer print, and we were all very happy with it. And then I think we showed it someplace, and a couple of note cards said they thought it was a little too long, or the theaters thought it was too long, or something. So we needed to cut time out of it. So they went
Mm-hmm.
in, and actually, I had nothing to do with it. They hired, actually, strangely enough, I think it was one of Stanley Kubrick's editors to re-edit it, and they re-edited the film. And the major things they did is just trim stuff up, and they took out a few scenes and stuff like that.
Okay.
Uh, the biggest problem I had with it, I really didn't think it hurt the movie that much. The biggest problem was that the original version was recorded at Saul Zaentz Studios at the same time and the same mixers as they were doing Amadeus.
Oh.
And the score and the mix was gorgeous. And when they did the thing, they remixed it, and it was just a slapdash sort of thing. So it was never had all the subtlety and the beauty of the original.
Yeah. Oh man, we're almost out of time, but I do want to ask you one more question. You mentioned the Masters of Horror and how much you really enjoyed that. Fair-haired child plays almost like a fable or a fairy tale. What was the inspiration behind that?
Well, when I read the script, the original script, it was always kind of like that. The original draft had a fairy tale quality to it, and I really wanted to play that up and make it as much like that as I could. And there were definitely some heroes involved in that. Mick Garris for supporting everything that I did on it.
Yeah.
Uh, and Lindsay Pulsifer, who's the star of that, I thought she was such a find, and she was such a good sport. She had to be covered in dust for most of it, and nobody would go near her because she'd be sitting in her chair just covered in dust. You went up to her like clouds of dust. But she did, I thought, an amazing job, and Walter Phelan playing the creature,
Yeah.
he did a really good job, and of course K&B making the monster and stuff. So
Yeah. K&B, that's Greg Nicotero's company, right?
exactly, yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
awesome. William, we are out of time. This has been an absolutely fascinating hour. Thank you so much
Thank you so much for
for
having me on
coming.
your
Yeah,
show.
for being here and sharing these amazing stories, giving us info that we didn't have. I hope you enjoyed yourself as much as I did.
I had a great time, and I want to
Yeah,
thank you and all your watchers. Thank you so much, and thanks everyone for your support over the years.
absolutely, absolutely. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. It looks like YouTube was having some technical issues on the live end, but I will upload the episode there as well. If it didn't stream to YouTube, it appeared everywhere on Facebook and Twitter and everywhere else. So, YouTube people, I will take care of you after the show. Again, big thank you to William Malone. Thank you to all our viewers for tuning in. Uh, Till tomorrow, stay safe. And on behalf of William and myself, stay walking. Good night.